Check, check, mic check. Check, check, mic check. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder, and I am here to tell you 5 reasons not to hire a podcast editor. What? Wait, huh? Don't you edit podcasts for other podcasters? Yes, I do. And it is a really fun, awesome way to monetize the making of my podcasts, which have been really tricky to figure out how to monetize, if I'm honest. And yeah, a lot of people who edit other people's podcasts are going to see the episode title and be like, ugh, why do all these people think they don't have to get their podcast edited? I hate this podcast, or what is she saying? Blah, blah, blah. And they're not going to listen to the episode. And if they did listen to the episode, they would know that I am their friend. And I think that in many cases, you should hire a podcast editor, a good one, invest the money, and get your show sounding great. But there are definitely some reasons why not to hire a podcast editor. And I'm going to tell you what they are. Number 1, do not hire a podcast editor if you already are a genius at Adobe Audition or Logic or Pro Tools or Hindenburg. And hey, maybe you've figured out how to get Audacity or Garageband to bend to your will and your show sounds great and you're not pulling your hair out every time you try to edit an episode. I mean, at least that's been my experience with GarageBand and Audacity, but some people love those 2 pieces of software. And hey, if it works for you, who am I to say anything different? So this one is kind of obvious. It's a gimme. If you love editing and you already know how to do it and you're pretty good at it, great. Keep doing what you're doing. You probably don't even need to listen to the rest of this episode. You can skip forward to the next one. I give you permission and I don't want to waste your time. You could be, editing your next episode instead of listening to this. Reason number 2, why you should not hire a podcast editor. And that is because you're looking on Fiverr and you only want to spend no more, max $25 an episode. Okay, I've seen this in a lot of podcasting forums and groups. And yes, I am biased because I edit podcasts. And yes, I charge my clients a lot more than $25 an episode. Why? Because for $25 an episode, you're just not going to get the quality that you would get from someone that you would pay more. Additionally, the things that that person is doing to your episode, you could probably very easily learn how to do yourself and or get a really cool tool or piece of software to do automatically for you for free or for less than $25 per episode. That tool that I'm going to recommend is called Auphonic. And I don't personally really use that tool because I do like doing my own editing and I do have my own audio engineer. But I have used that with clients who don't have the budget for a professional editor and or want to DIY it to a degree, but just need some help with some of the more technical bits. The things that $25 or $30 an episode editor are doing is probably things like taking your intro and or music and stitching it together with your episode and stitching it together with your outro. Auphonic can do that for you for free. You can learn how to do that yourself in 30 minutes or less on the phone with me or someone else who knows how to do these kinds of things. That person may also be leveling your voice and your guest voice. Auphonic can easily do that. And that person may be running a filter to take out background noise, also can be done by Auphonic. The things that take time and cost money and that benefit you when you pay a good quality audio editor, and there are quite a few of us out there who do a really solid professional quality job that will make your podcast sound better than and stand up above a lot of other shows that are out there, are more subtle audio techniques for really helping your voice sound super rich. Content editing, which means like making suggestions for your show. If your interview is super long and rambly, making suggestions for things that are off-brand or not as interesting or redundant or make your guest sound a little, I don't know, full of themselves. Also, taking out, I mean, you've heard podcasts that sound like that. And it's just really not the most enjoyable listening experience. It bothers some of us more than others. I have full out stopped listening to shows that I really wanted to listen to because of things like that. And a good editor will be able to catch those things and take them out seamlessly while letting the speech pattern and conversation still flow and sound natural. A cheap editor or not as skilled editor may take those things out, but it might not always sound super smooth and flawless, and you might be able to actually hear those edits, or suddenly it just sounds weird. Your good podcast editor is also going to keep up to date on industry news and tools that might be available to you, and is going to make recommendations to you if suddenly you started recording in a new way and something doesn't quite sound right, or there's a way that it could sound better, like by using a different microphone stand or a pop filter. Your editor is going to hear those things and be able to help you out a lot. Oh, hey, it's that special time of the episode where we acknowledge our podcast angels who financially help make this show and the Creative Impostor possible. And today is the best angel of them all. You. That's right. You heard me. You want to be a podcast angel, don't you? Here's how. Have you ever heard of a website called Patreon? Patreon is kind of a cool, funky, awesome sort of crowdfunding campaign whereby you get to become a patron of someone who is creating awesome things that are of value to you. So rather than a one-time pledge of $100, $200, $50, $20, whatever, $500, $5,000 for a one-time return on investment, you contribute a small-ish amount ongoing every month. And in exchange, you get access to secret content from me. So for example, you can contribute anywhere from $2 to $100 a month, enough to earn the special title of Podcast Magic Genie. So if you want to learn some super special secret audio quality tips for upping your podcast production game, whether you are actually going to hire a podcast editor or whether you are going to DIY it, which we'll get to in a minute, I am pledging a promise to you that if we can get the Patreon up to at least $50 per month, that's like 10 of you becoming a podcast barista at the $5 a month level, enough to buy me a cup of premium pour over coffee at my favorite coffee shop in Chicago, then we can do it. A custom editing tutorial for everyone who has contributed on Patreon. You can learn more and get in on the action at thecreativeimpostor.com/support. And I know you want to be an angel. You want to know how I know? Because of reviews like this one that just came in from Chris in Maryland. Chris calls Podcast Envy friendly and practical. 5 stars. Thanks, Chris. I enjoyed Andrea's fresh take on starting a podcast. No tips on how to be an overnight success here, but rather some practical encouragement and ideas for making progress. Looking forward to future episodes. So if you love Podcast Envy as much as Chris from Maryland does, go ahead, hop on over to thecreativimpostor.com/support and buy me that cup of coffee. You could also leave me a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. That wouldn't hurt either. Anyway, reason number 3 why you should not hire a podcast editor. You should not hire a podcast editor if your content is so good, like so good. No one else is covering this content. No one else has your unique perspective and point of view, and what you have to say is super groundbreaking. And everyone, your whole audience is just waiting on bated breath for the next thing that you're going to say or share. And the content is so good that we can overlook mediocre to downright poor audio quality. I mean, for the most part, I cannot stand listening to shows that have low audio quality or that don't edit and leave in the lip smacks and the ums and the heavy breathing and the long awkward pauses and all the small talk and chit chat at the beginning and the end of the episode. But there are a select few, like very few, and I don't want to name names, a very few that I love the podcaster or the show enough that I kind of want to reach out to them and be like, hey, can I edit your show for you for a super discounted rate or even free, because I love listening to your show and it drives me crazy and I would rather listen to the edited version that I would make for you than listen to this one. But it could happen. Your content could be so good that you don't need to invest in an editor because people are going to listen to it anyway. Totally legit, Totally fine. If you're meeting all your goals and you've got as many listeners as you want and your listeners are happy, hey, who am I to say you need an editor? Reason number 4, not to hire a podcast editor. Because who cares if your podcast sounds like crap? I mean, seriously, you're just doing this for fun and to hang out with your friends and play Dungeons and Dragons and talk about it on the podcast, and all your friends listen to your show and they don't care about audio quality, and it's just like a fun little hobby thing that you do, and it's not going to make any difference one way or the other if you have 5 listeners or 20 listeners. You're just recording the show because you like it. And that's fine. Just a hobby. It's just fun. Don't hire an editor. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, at this point, you might be thinking that I sound totally full of myself. And maybe you're like, I don't know about this podcast envy show. Andrea's just a little too snarky for my liking. But listen, I am really telling you this from the bottom of my heart. And the reason why is because I want your show to sound amazing. The more amazing your show sounds and the more dedication that you put to it, the more you care about your show and the more your listeners can hear that you care about your show, the more your audience is going to grow, the more deeply you will be able to connect with them because you're removing obstacles and hurdles to their listening experience. And yes, working with a quality editor can be a hefty monetary investment, and there is a range of prices. I'm not saying that if you don't pay north of $100 an episode, your editor sucks. I don't know. There might be some really good editors out there. I know that most of the editors that I would recommend, and myself included, generally charge more than $100 an episode, and it can vary based on how long your episodes are, what kind of format, how frequently you publish, how consistent you are, whether they're doing show notes for you. There's a whole lot of things that can go into hiring a great editor. And I'll be releasing some more episodes that talk about all of those wonderful gifts of professional podcast editing that are available. Also, I'll be sharing some tips and tricks of how you can DIY it, because that is reason number 5. You love DIY and learning and totally want to dig into a course or some tutorials on YouTube so that you can become your own podcast editor. I know that Elsie Escobar, one of my podcasting heroes, has a super affordable Garageband tutorial on the She Podcasts website under courses. And I personally like to follow Mike Russell of Music Radio Creative on YouTube to up my Adobe Audition editing game. Neither of those are affiliate links, by the way. They are just awesome resources for you. Because yes, I do totally believe that if you want to, you can learn how to DIY it if you don't already know how. I mean, I did. So please know that this is one of those tough love snarky podcasts, and I am not saying this to belittle any editors out there who are just doing the nuts and bolts basics. If that's working for you and your business, great. And if you as a podcaster are totally happy with your show and you have everything you want as is, great. But just consider that more is possible. I'm Andrea Klunder, your podcast boss, and this has been a little insight into why you should not hire a podcast editor. I'm not telling you what to do. Okay, yeah, maybe I am. Anyways, I hope you stick with it. I hope that you're loving your podcasting experience, and I look forward to, quote, seeing, unquote, you on the next episode. You can get show notes at podcastenvy.com along with some kind of downloadable little something when you drop your email. And BT Dubs, I would love to hear from you if you can think of some other reasons why you should not hire a podcast editor. And if I agree with your reasons, I will gladly share them here on the show. Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me. The Podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Impostor Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.